Hey guys, Budcat7 here. Okay, it is Tuesday, September 17, 2019, and I want to thank you for visiting the Stonewall Research channel here on YouTube. Thank you very much. I really do appreciate it. Okay guys, well, in this video we are going to address the myth of deforestation and societal collapse in the native peoples, because this is one of the things that is often mentioned by anthropologists and archaeologists when discussing the collapse of native societies. And I read it in also Charles C. Mann's book, 1491. A couple of the researchers, mainstream researchers, had suggested this. And it seems to be a bit contrary to the whole concept that the native peoples were experts in the field of agriculture and horticulture, yet for some reason they weren't smart enough to figure out that if they cut down all the trees in their immediate area there, they were going to be up Schitt's Creek without a paddle. So on the one hand, we're supposed to be looking at this like, the native peoples were these knuckle-dragging idiots, and at the same time, they were experts at, agriculture and understanding of the way things grow and, the flora and fauna, etc., etc. So there's a bunch of contradictions here. And I'm sorry, I'm not buying into it, and I have some very good reasons for it. And it also has to do with the stone walls of New York and New England to some degree. Okay? So, look, they're all over the map about so many different things. And one of the things that they had mentioned was about Cahokia. And I was just reading about deforestation in the North American forests, and they talk about in this article here about how, first of all, the whole article is just nonsense, and other than some accounts or whatever they're talking about, but they do talk about Cahokia in this article and about how they had deforested 9 miles around the Cahokia area there. And actually, they go through it in this article on ancient origins here, in the rise and fall of Cahokia and the mega floods there. And I was just looking into this whole thing. So, I wanted to know about, the deforestation, the flooding, and all these things that they attribute to the collapse of the Cahokian culture there. And I just, for the curiosity's sake, I went and looked at the category of 13th century floods, and I don't see any mention of any sort of flooding going on in the 1200s that seems so major. And what Mann said also in his book, and I mentioned in one of my videos, about all of these cataclysms going on from Canada to Florida on the northeast part of North America here. A whole series of cataclysms were going on, but yet I look at this category in Wikipedia about 13th century floods. I don't seem to see anything in there. Of course, this list may not reflect recent changes, but, I'm already growing a beard here waiting for something to change in there, and they're going to add all of these big floods that happened, with Cahokia here, and there's no mention of it in there for some strange reason. okay? And also that year with Cahokia there is supposed to be the medieval warming period that they call for, but apparently it was also a cooling period because you had this 1257 Somalis eruption here, which is the event had a probable volcanic explosivity index of 7, making it one of the largest volcanic eruptions during the current Holocene epoch. Okay, so this huge eruption in the middle of this warming period. So we're supposed to generally, accept it as this warming period, but apparently it was a warming period and it was a cooling period. So, it's hard, I guess, for them to make up their mind exactly. But, when you look at this thing here, it says about the climate effects here. The Somalis eruption came after the medieval climate anomaly, a period early in the last millennium with unusually warm temperatures, and at a time when a period of climate stability was ending, with early eruptions in 1108, 1171, and 1230 already having upset global climate. So you had all these eruptions upsetting global climate, which certainly doesn't suggest any warming at all. Okay, subsequent time periods displayed increased volcanic activity for some reason. Whenever they say this increased volcanic activity, they never explain why or anything like that. Until the early 20th century increase. The time period 1250 to 1300 was heavily disturbed by volcanic activity. So this volcanic activity caused cooling and all this kind of stuff. So the Little Ice Age was a period of several centuries during the last millennium during which global temperatures were depressed. The cooling was associated with volcanic eruptions, okay, so with this volcanic eruption too. And then you have also sort of contradicting stuff about here in the Four Corners region of North America. The 1257 Somalis eruption took place during the Pueblo III period in southwestern North America, during which the Mesa Verde region in the San Juan River was the site of the so-called cliff dwellings. Well, it's not so-called because there's cliff dwellings there. If they're saying they're so-called, maybe it has nothing to do with the Pueblo III. They're all over the map with this stuff, and it disgusts me because they can't make up their minds. It's like schizophrenic. Several sites were abandoned after the eruption, which had cooled the local climate. You're in the middle of the desert, so it cooled the local climate, and that was a bad thing. The Somalis eruption was among several eruptions during this period which may have triggered climate stresses, which in turn caused strife within the society of ancestral Puebloans. Possibly they left the northern Colorado Plateau as a consequence. Okay, so possibly they left. All right, possibly, but apparently in the Altiplano, it was a good thing. In the Altiplano of South America, a cold and dry interval between 1200 and 1450 has been associated with the Somalis eruption and the 1280 eruption of Quilotoa volcano in Ecuador. The use of rain-fed agriculture increased in the area between the Salar de Uyuni, excuse me, and the Salar de Copasa, despite the climate change, implying that the local population effectively coped with the effects of the eruption. So this increased food production down here, the cooler climate and wetter climate and everything, increased food production. It seemed like they just did fine, effectively cope. But for some reason in the Four Corners, in the middle of the desert, the bone-dry desert there, it was a bad thing. Okay, which I find it hard to believe. And as far as I'm concerned, the whole Four Corners region in North America is so disconnected and schizophrenic. They have no idea of anything that's happening in there. I think a lot of the research on my channel helps clear it up. But this is just to demonstrate to you guys that these people having problems with understanding the past and what was going on, and you have to be very leery about anything they say. They're all over the map and excluding and omitting things that are quite obvious. Why this is not included in here is just, I guess they're just waiting for Wikipedia, the online baloney encyclopedia, to catch up or whatever it is. You would consider this main eruption there and all the flooding that was involved with Cahokia to be somewhere in here, but it doesn't seem to be. It seems to be absent. I don't know. Maybe it's behind my computer. Nah, just my knapsack there. So you gotta pay attention to this stuff, okay? So, look, this whole myth about the deforestation and the collapse of native populations just doesn't make any sense whatsoever. And as far as deforestation goes, well, this is one of the claims in the northeastern part of North America here, even with the colonists themselves having a lot of trouble with deforestation or whatever. Apparently, all the heavy logging and stuff like that is, halted to some extent in the 1850s, and apparently the whole area recovered by 1920. So, I mean, it seems fairly resilient, and being led to believe that somehow the native peoples collapsed their societies in various places because of deforestation. I'm sorry, I'm not buying this. And the whole northeast area is a vast forest with, billions of trees there and whatnot, and you're telling me that they collapsed their society because they couldn't find any wood? And even as far as the colonists and settlers go, they couldn't find any wood. They deforested. They had to go far to get it. Well, if you're smart, okay, like the Iroquois, okay, one of the most advanced native peoples, or the most advanced native peoples, socially at least, in all of the Americas for some reason, and I have a sneaky suspicion that their way that they were highly organized and sort of the whole, philosophies of their tribe was something that was carried over from the Adena and the Hopewell people. Adena mounds are found in eastern Pennsylvania, and also, evidence of the Adena up in the New York State. I think this was a carryover from, those cultures, okay? People who had, knowledge of metal, obviously very organized, building mounds, etc., etc. This whole thing with, the native peoples are, knuckle-dragging savages, it's a bunch of crap, okay? Anything that, might tarnish, the appearance of the colonists and settlers, they got to do what they got to do. Okay, so let me explain to you what was going on here with the Iroquois, because it would seem to me in their confederation there, in the Iroquois League, and all, they had all of these tribes, okay, and many of the different tribes inhabited areas, mountainous areas. Okay, we're going to look at the Stonewall mapper again here, New Hampshire Stonewall mapper here. Okay. All right, let's take a look at it here. And you had all these stone walls here that they're showing in New Hampshire here. Let's see if we can get it here. Okay, so here's the Connecticut River here. I'm waiting for this thing to catch up here because it fills in even more. And part of this whole thing is that this is absolutely contiguous. You understand? The walls here are absolutely contiguous. How this has anything to do with colonists and settlers is just beyond me. Okay, it's certainly by the configuration of the walls and the density of them and everything, you can pretty much assume that it's just like this on the other side here in Vermont. Okay, with all of these contiguous stone walls, do you really think it was? One of the things I brought up in my debunking series, okay, when John Delano gave his lecture at Green Mountain Lectures or whatever, and he showed the property in Van Rensselaer there, you couldn't understand. It's not easy to understand how they built the stone walls. When you look at the stone walls area, just these areas of stone walls, okay, that the way he had it mapped out in there, who is building whose stone walls? It seemed to me like if you were the guy in the center of all these stone walls, all you had to do is sit in a chair in the middle of your yard, and in the middle of your property, and all the other people around you would just build the stone walls and enclose you in there, and then you wouldn't have to build any stone walls. Who was building whose stone walls? You were right next to this guy, this guy, this guy, this guy, this guy. Well, all you had to do was sit there in a chair. They built all the stone walls. Well, that's the demarcation for your property there. You didn't have to lift a finger. Okay, so it makes no sense, okay? Who is building whose stone walls? That's the whole thing, okay? So let me explain something to you about the Iroquois, okay, and how advanced they were, and they had this confederation of tribes, okay? So this is the mountainous regions here, okay? These regions here are not good for crop farming because you're in the mountains, okay? There's very little arable land here, okay? And where they were growing their crops close to the St. Lawrence River, 500-acre farms, is reported by the professor at Cornell, and the history done with Washington sending up agents there to burn these farms, and the British burning them to control the people. The average Haudenosaunee settlement had 8 square miles of maize planted around there. Okay, well that was not going on in the mountainous region here. You can't do that. There's very little places to grow stuff, okay? So one of the issues that the people who were living, the tribes that were living in the areas of the mountainous regions, okay, was that they had a lot of people and not enough arable land to grow enough food for all those people, okay? So they went to the Grand Council, these tribes that lived in these areas. Okay, this is how it worked, folks. Not very different than what we got it today, right? You do your job. Are you growing stuff to eat in your yard for all year long? Well, no. You do your job, and then you go to the supermarket and you get it from somebody who brought it there, from people who grew it and everything. Well, that's what was going on here. It didn't matter whether you were deforesting other areas of land or whatever it is, because first of all, open up more areas for these people to grow. But the mountainous region is tough because you got one side of the mountain's good, the other side of the mountain's bad. They didn't grow much up here, okay? So they had the lumber, they had the timber up here, and the other parts of the Haudenosaunee tribes, they were growing the corn, okay? So when they needed timber, okay, they said to these guys, okay, look, you guys ship us over here where there's no timber, where we're growing all this stuff, where there is no timber. We've already deforested around these areas to grow all these huge 500-acre farms. You send us the timber up the Connecticut River to the St. Lawrence here, and we'll send you down the corn, okay, and the squash and the beans and whatever else they did. You see how it worked? Right? It didn't matter whether they deforested those areas over there because they had their buddies here in the mountainous region with the billions and billions and billions of trees. Okay? Very hard to deforest an area of billions and billions and billions of trees. Okay? There's always trees. You deforest here, there's trees here. You deforest trees here, there's trees here. Okay? That's how it worked. All right? There was no collapse in society because of deforestation, because when you deforested this area where you grew all the corn, you just called your buddies over here and said, send us over some wood. And these guys here said, well, send us over some corn. But they had already highly organized society and a highly organized distribution network, okay? So here's the thing, and if people have a hard time understanding this, and because it's new to them and they don't understand it, because it's my own hypothesis, and an explanation for what some of these walls are. Look, the walled-in areas were not only ceremonial, but they were also living areas, social areas, storage areas, all this kind of stuff similar to what people would do today with stone walls. Okay? Demarcation line, whatever it is, okay? But multiple uses, not just, you have a building with a bunch of walls in it, a giant 10,000, 50,000 square foot building, okay, with a bunch of walls in it. Well, this is the office area, and this is the storage area, and this is the production area. That's how this worked too, okay? And if you're transporting 20,000 bushels down the Connecticut River, because this is how it worked. These people, the Grand Council called in all the chiefs from all the confederations here, and they said, look, okay, I know you guys have timber over here. You guys are down by along the Long Island Sound and on the shore over there doing all the fishing and hunting and all this kind of stuff like that. We're growing corn up here. You got your people doing all this work over here. Okay, you grow a little corn over there. Well, how much do you need, okay? How many people do you got here? And how much corn do you need? We'll ship you down however many bushels you figure you need of corn down the Connecticut River here, okay, by canoe. All right, and we'll ship it all to you. Let us know how much more you need or what you need, and we're going to send it down there. Send us up some, beaver pelts and, some lumber and some fish, smoked fish, and send us up all that stuff. We'll send all the corn and beans and squash down here. Now they're shipping all this stuff by canoe down the Connecticut River. What do you think? They're going to leave 20,000 bushels of corn in their canoes overnight and then sleep and then go further down here? No. They got it off over here. They stored it in the walled areas here, okay? They distributed it. Just organized distribution. It wasn't like, they came down with the canoe and then a bunch of people ran up and were like, give me some corn. I'm hungry. Blah, blah, blah. No, it wasn't like that in a highly organized society such as the Haudenosaunee. Okay? They brought it down the Connecticut River here and then they stored it in these areas. Okay? Certain parts of the walled areas were designated as storage areas here. And then it went from here to these people here and then it went inland as well. Okay? You had to drop it off here. What are you going to do with 20,000 bushels of corn? Just keep it on the canoes over there and just give it to a few guys and then they'll do whatever with it? No. A very highly organized level of distribution networks were here, and these stone walls were all part of that distribution network. Hence, this contiguous walled-in region here just goes on and on and on and on, all right next to each other. Hundreds and hundreds of thousands of miles of stone walls built by populations big enough to do that. The millions of people who are here in the Americas when the explorers got here. When the colonists and settlers got here and their reports of the natives here being, 40,000 here and 30,000, well, that's because 95% of them were dead. Okay? So, no deforestation and collapse of native societies. When they needed wood, they called their buddies who are already at the wooded areas, okay? If they deforested 9 miles over here, then they moved over here. They weren't worried about the food and all that kind of stuff because certain people were hunting, certain people were fishing, certain people were growing corn, certain people were doing all of these different tasks, were all dealt out, okay, in a highly organized society. Okay, and the walled areas were part of the distribution of these things. You're talking about vast amounts of material. Okay, think about it. Okay, from an industrial design business standpoint, it's no different here as it is today. No difference. The type of mindset and the type of psychology involved is exactly the same. Okay? So you're sending 20, 30, 40,000 bushels of corn down to these areas where these people are going to be cutting wood and doing all that stuff and sending it back to you. Well, you have to have a high level of organization and you have to have areas to store all of this stuff and to keep the people there, okay, who are handling it, who have positions of responsibility and authority. All right? So it wasn't just, these, hippie type people, with the love and the, the forest. And, yeah, I guess that's part of component of their society and the spiritual and ceremonial part of it. But, there's hard work that had to be done. Okay? And the Iroquois were some very, very advanced people. Okay? And if you don't think those areas there were in the mountainous regions were bad areas to grow crops, well, just look at the year without summer. Okay? In Wikipedia. Or anywhere else. All right? The year 1816 is known as the year without a summer, also the poverty year, and the 1800 and froze to death because of severe climate abnormalities that caused the average global temperature to decrease by a certain amount. This resulted in major food shortages across the northern hemisphere. So let's see, it was because of Mount Tambora, okay? Just like that one in the 13th century there with the, was the medieval warming period and the medieval cooling period. Why don't they call it the medieval warming period and the medieval cooling period? I don't understand. It's just the medieval warming period. Nothing about cooling until you read into it. Okay, so let's find out what was going on over here in a year without a summer up here in the Northeast. Okay. The crop failures of the year without a summer may have helped shape the settling of the American heartland, as many thousands of people, particularly farm families, who were wiped out by the event. Okay, do you think these people didn't understand that living in the mountainous areas wasn't good for growing crops? I mean, didn't they know that from Europe? But what you had is a bunch of indentured servants who weren't farmers that came to live there on this Dutch scheme of indentured servitude. Okay, they left New England for western New York, it's relatively flatter and you can grow stuff, and the Northwest Territory in search of more hospitable climate, richer soil, and better growing conditions. Okay, so the mountainous regions are not good areas for growing. You understand? So if you have a big tribe there and it's part of the Iroquois Confederation, well, you're going to need food for all of those people. So how are you going to get it? Well, it's got to be shipped to you, okay, in a very highly organized fashion, okay, not a free-for-all, all right? Listen to this. According to historian L.D. Stilwell, Vermont alone experienced a decrease in population of between 10,000 and 15,000, erasing 7 previous years of population growth. That's just Vermont. Just Vermont alone, not including all the rest of the states. Okay? So people left by the hundreds of thousands out of the northeast over there because growing there sucked. Okay, it sucked to begin with. But then this year out of summer just destroyed people. And this is when Robert Thorson, the so-called expert on the stone walls, which is ludicrous, okay, says that this peak of stone wall building happened because of this, okay, when these areas lost populations over there by the hundreds of thousands. Okay, does that make sense to you? All right? So, look. I'm just trying to clue you in here, okay? No, societal collapse because of deforestation, okay? The native peoples were pretty damn smart, okay? Not these knuckle-dragging savages running around in deerskins flapping all over the place, okay? They were highly organized socially, politically, and everything else. Their organizational skills were bar none, and their agricultural skills were bar none. See, because when the colonists and settlers got here, they couldn't grow a damn thing if they had the CEO of Miracle Grow standing over their shoulder, okay? They were so inept, okay? But see, the native peoples here were experts. They had anthropogenic forests going on with all the nut trees and other things that were growing, and of course maize. All right? So get this idea out of your head that, these, this whole sappy ass, ridiculous story about the colonists. Really, it's so stupid and absurd. It's really, this is just the sort of propaganda nonsense they want to get you to believe and all this kind of stuff. And, it sort of, filters in to the history of the native peoples in America, because these people cannot break themselves from this ridiculous bias. Okay, even today, up into the 20th century, people were still, on native peoples as beings from sort of, primitive peoples, with godless primitive peoples who knew nothing, except how to hunt and fish and all that kind of stuff. Wrong. Okay, and that was the 20th. That wasn't that long ago, folks. Okay, so you think we have an advanced understanding of these people now? Well, we don't. We're just starting to crack it now. Okay, so I'm telling you, no deforestation, no collapse of societies. The native peoples throughout the Americas knew all about each other. They knew about all the systems, and they knew everything. The Cherokees were Iroquois peoples. Okay? So get this notion out of you. Just forget about what they say. I just showed you a bunch of stuff. They don't know what the F is going on. All right? So just ignore everything they say. Just parse it. Okay? Be like Bruce Lee. You take what's effective and what's understood from all of these different things and compile your own understanding of it. Okay? Some people do some legitimate research and other people don't. What do you think? Every anthropologist and archaeology is a top in the field? Some of them are just complete dummies. Okay? That's how the world is. Okay? Some graduated with an A and some graduated with a C. All right? All right, guys. So I needed to get that off my chest, because I read these things about what their notions of the people of the past are, and it makes me sick, to be honest with you. Okay? Here's their notion of the past with Cahokia. Did the mega flood spell disaster for, Yeah, maybe. Here's a nice little picture of somebody built their house on top of the Cahokia Mound there. Hey, that's a mound? Yeah, who cares? Building my house up here. F them. All right, guys. Anyway, end of the video. Thank you very much. Please do hit the like button. Budcat7 signing out, coming with a video real soon. Peace.